Good morning, fourth grade. Welcome back to math class. Go ahead and get ready with your math book, a pencil, and let's get started with a game. This is a game of opposites. I will say a word. You try to think of a word that has the opposite effect of that word. Here we go. On. Hope you thought of off. Stop. Go. Let's see. Dark. Light. Day. Night. Old. Young. Addition. Wait, what? Yeah, addition. Subtraction. Multiplication. Division. How well did you do? Okay, so here we go. Today, I'm going to introduce to you two things that are opposites of each other. Just like on and off, stop and go, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Two new opposites for today are squares and square roots. Now, when I say squares, I'm not actually talking about like a square, but kind of, sort of. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Remember my Lego? I have this square right here, 4 going over, 4 going across, okay, up and down. Okay, so this is a square that I made out of my Lego pieces. Let's keep this in mind as I introduce to you what squares or squared actually means, okay? But first, I need to teach you some new words. Here we go. This is a 4. You know that, right? Right. It's a whole number 4. But today we're going to learn a new word for that. And whenever you have a whole number, we could say that that is the base. The base. This 4 is called the base. Okay? But now look carefully at this 2 up here in the sky. Just like stars are up in the sky, this 2 is up in the sky. And it's really small. Okay, that's kind of why I brought out my little star today. So there's a little 2 up in the sky. It's very small. That 2 is called an exponent. An exponent. Now, you can have exponents that are 3s, 4s, 5s, 6, 10, 1,000. But the most commonly used exponent is the number 2. Now, 4 is the base. 2 is called the exponent. Now let me tell you how you would read the 4 and the 2. The base is easy to read. We just say 4, say that. Nicely done. But we don't say 4 2s. Instead, we say 4 squared. 4 squared, say that. 4 squared. Let's read this. Ready, go. 4 squared. When you have a 2 as an exponent, it is always read as squared. Squared. Now, what does 4 squared means? It means that you're taking the base, the 4, and you're writing the 4 down this many times. 2 times. I have a 4 here, and I have a 4 there. I have 2 4s that I am multiplying together. That's very important. We're multiplying them together. Students, what is 4 times 4? 16. That's right. So I could say the problem like this. 4 squared is equal to 16. Let's read that together. 4 squared equals 16. Let's read this together again. 4 squared. One more time. 4 squared. When you're looking at 4 squared, which one of those, the 4 or the 2, is the base? 4. What is the squared? The 2. What is the tiny 2 called? An exponent. That's correct. You can have exponents of many different numbers, but only the 2 are we going to say squared with. Only the 2 gets that title of squared, okay? So just to review, 4 is our base, 2 is our exponent. It is read 4 squared. What 4 squared means is that you are writing down the number 4 2 times and multiplying it together. What is 4 times 4? 16. Because 4 times 4 is 16, we can say that 4 squared is equal to 16. Let's try it with a new one. I'm totally making this up, so I'm going to use another number. Let's say 3, and then this little guy right here, okay? How would you read that? 3 squared. Which of those 2 numbers is the exponent? The 2. Which of these 2 numbers is the base? The 3. What does 3 squared mean? 3 squared means 3 times 3. What is the value of 3 squared? Or what does 3 squared equal? 3 squared equals, do you know it? 9. It equals 9 because 3 times 3 equals 9. Okay. Do you remember how I said, well, I tell you what, I'm going to say that in just a little bit, but let's go ahead and open up our books to lesson 147, page 265, and let's do section 2 together, okay? Go to section 2. Go, 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 go. I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay. We're only going to talk about just the first top of this yellow box really quickly, and then we're going to go down to section 2. So just to review, let's go down to the middle part. A small 2 written to the right and above a number is an exponent. The exponent 2 means to multiply the number or the base by itself. So 3 squared is equal to 9. Okay, we're going to come back to this yellow box in just a moment, but for right now, go down to section 2. Section 2. Let's do this together, shall we? Pencils ready? Here we go. Let's read these together, okay? First, I'm going to read the instructions. It says to write the products. Remember what a product is? The product is the answer to a multiplication question. Write the products. Remember to multiply the base by itself, not by 2. That's very important. Remember to multiply the base by itself and not by 2. Let's read letter A together. Ready, begin. 1 squared. What does 1 squared mean? 1 times 1. What is 1 times 1? It is 2. Uh-oh, we've already seen 7. Let's do it together. 7 squared means 7 times 7. And 7 times 7 is 49. Let's go up to B. 2 squared. That means 2 times itself. 2. What is 2 times 2? 4. Go across. Let's read it together. 3 squared. What does it mean? 3 times 3. What is 3 times 3? 9. Go over to D. Let's read it together. 4 squared. What is 4 times 4? 16. Read it together. 5 squared. What does it mean? 5 times 5. What is 5 times 5? 25. So we can say that 5 squared is equal to 25. Letter F, read it with me. 6 squared. What does it equal? Don't say 12. I know some of you were thinking 12. If you were thinking 12, you were thinking 6 times 2, but that is not what squared means. When you're squaring a number, you're taking that number and you're multiplying it by itself. So what is 6 times itself times 6? 6 times 6 is 36. That's our one that rhymes. 6 times 6, 36. Go down to 8. 8 squared. 8 times 8 is, I ate till I ate, and I ate and I got sick on the floor. 8 times 8 is 64. 9 squared, 81. 10 squared, don't say 20. That means 10 times 10, 100. What does 11 squared equal? 12 squared, 144. Let's look at the first story problem together. Missy Johnson planted a square flower garden. Each side is 8 yards. What is the area of the garden? Now, students, remember, when we're finding the area of a square, we can say that the area of a square is equal to A equals S times S. Remember that? A equals S times S. Now that we've learned about squared, and squared means to multiply by itself, we could write it like this. Area equals S squared. Squared means we would take the side and multiply it by itself. Let's do that for this problem, please. One side is 8 yards. Area is equal to 8 squared. Students watching, what is 8 times 8? 64. So the area is equal to, oh, I'm going to slide over. Area is equal to 64 square, what? What is the measurement here? Square yards. 64 square yards. That is for our first story problem. Great job, guys. So we have done the first story problem. We've done all of section 2 together. We've learned that a little 2 up in the sky is called an exponent. It means to multiply the base by itself. And that little 2, we pronounce that, or we read it as squared. Remember how we started out this math lesson with our game of opposites? Hot, cold, on, off, soft, hard, adding, subtracting, squares, square roots. The opposite of squaring a number is to take the square root of that number. And that, my friend, is what we're talking about next. Let's look underneath this jagged sign. This is to show where we're going opposite. Everything below is opposite of what is above. And that makes sense because down is opposite of up. There we go. Take a look at this. This is an unusual looking symbol. At first glance, you might think that it is a division symbol, but it's not. It's almost like a division symbol and a check mark have collided, okay? This is our new mathematical symbol that we're learning today, and it is called a square root symbol, also referred to as a radical sometimes. All right, the square root. This is read the square root of 16. The square root of 16. In order to solve the square root of 16, we have to think in the reverse of that, or the opposite of that. So we need to think, what number can we multiply by itself to equal that number, the number inside the square root symbol? So let's start out. What's 1 times itself? 1. That's not it. What's 2 times itself? 2 times 2 is 4. That's not it. What's 3 times itself? Well, 3 squared equals 9. 9's not 16, so that's not it. What's 4 times itself? Hey, 16. So the square root of 16 is equal to 4. Why is that? Well, because 4 times itself equaled 16. Since 4 times itself equaled 16, 4 is the answer to the square root of 16. Let's try another one. Let's see. The square root of 25. Think, what number could you multiply by itself to get that number? Do you know? I think some of you do. 5. If you answered 5, good job. Good job, good job. All right, let's go back to our book. Let me share my screen. Let's go back up to the top section, shall we? Let's do this. The process that is opposite squaring is square root. The symbol, that right there, is used to show that a square root is to be found. That is read the square root of 25. Hey, that's the one that we just did. The reason why the square root of 25 is 5 is because 5 times itself equals 25, or we could say 5 squared is equal to 25. Now, Joshua, I know you're excited about letter B, but we're going to hold off on that and do it at the end, so hang tight. All right, section 3. Write the square root by counting from 1 to 12. The square root of 1 equals, well, what is 1? What can we multiply to get 1? 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. The square root of 4 equals, what can you multiply by itself to get 4? 2. The square root of 9 equals, what times itself equals 9? 3. The square root of 16 equals 4. The square root of 25 equals 5. The square root of 36 equals 6. Why? Because 6 squared is equal to 36. Let's go down. Are you seeing the pattern here? What do you think G is? 7. Read H for me. Hopefully you read the square root of 64 equals 8. The square root of 81 equals 9. The square root of 100 equals 10. The square root of 121, 11. The square root of 144 equals 12. Nicely done. Remember that squaring is the opposite of finding the square root. Now, we've already worked story problem 1A together, and we found that it was 64 square yards. We did that by squaring the 8. We took the 8 and we multiplied it by itself, like so. We said 8 times 8 equals 64, but we remembered to put on that square units. Remember, area, you always have to square the units. Let's look at letter B. Joshua, if you were here, I would have you read letter B. Mr. Taylor's classroom. Oh, Joshua, you're going to grow up to be a teacher one day. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to pray about that. Mr. Taylor's classroom is in the shape of a square with an area of 81 square yards. How many yards are each side? Now let's think about this. Joshua has a classroom. I'm just going to say Joshua, okay? Joshua has a classroom. And the area is equal to 81 square yards. Well, we know the formula as A equals side times side. but they have already given us what the area is, 81. So how can we figure out what one of these sides is? Well, why don't we take the square root of that number? What is 81? What is the square root of 81? What times itself equals 81? If you answered 9, very good. Now notice that it's not 9 square yards because we're just talking about one of the sides. So the square drops off. We're just talking about the length of one side. Maybe that side would be 9 yards, okay? Great job with our squares and square roots today. Now, before we leave, let's go ahead and go down to this bottom section, the review. Let's do this first review section together. It's reviewing percents, and I think if we review section 4 together, you're going to do great with sections 5 and 6 on the review section on the back. So here we go. Remember, percent means out of what number? 100. That's right. Well, we're going to be making percents for each of these rainy days, the total of which is 10 days, okay? So why don't we take each one and make a fraction first? And remember, we learned a few lessons back that every fraction has an equivalent percent, and we went over some tricks to remember those. So let's put these into fractions, shall we? Okay, so the first one is 5 days. So let's think about that. 5 over 10. What does that reduce to? 1/2. If we have half of something, okay, remember percent is 100. So what is half of 100? 50. So let's just stick a percent sign on there. 50%. 1/2 is always equal to 50%. Let's move on to the next one. 3 days. Remember, it's out of 10 days, so let's make a fraction. 3/10. The trick for tens is look at your numerator, 3, and we're counting by tens, or basically just annexing a 0 at the end. So 3/10 is equal to how much percent? 30%. I bet you can guess the next one. 60%. How come it's 60? Because 6 over 10 is equal to 60%. I know what some of you are thinking, but Mrs. Evans, you can reduce that. You totally could. You could reduce it down to 3/5. And if that's the case, we were just counting by 20s that many times. 20, 40, 60. We counted 3 times, 60%. I know letter D is a green problem, but let's just go ahead and do it anyway for the fun of it. 9 days is what percent of 10 days? 90%. Why? Because 9 over 10 is equal to 90%. Okay, before I leave you, let's just do a quick little review. What is a whole number called? A base. What is a little tulip in the sky called? An exponent. How do you read the little tulip in the sky? Squared. What does squared mean? To multiply a number by itself. What is the opposite of squaring a number? Finding the square root of a number. The square root of a number is the number that it would take to multiply by itself to get the number that's inside the square root symbol. So what would you have to multiply by itself to equal 16? 4. Therefore, the square root of 16 is equal to 4. Guys, I hope you have a magnificent Monday. I can't wait to see how well you do on the back as we're reviewing percents and also doing some more work with perimeter at the very bottom of the page, and also area. Remember, for area, don't forget to square your measures. Okay, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.